Over the past year, science has taken a step forward and discovered just how rapidly and dangerously the nanoplastic threat is evolving. Have you ever wondered why? In recent years, we are increasingly facing a reality where antibiotics no longer work. Today, we can say with certainty that nanoplastic plays a direct role in the development of antibiotic resistance and helps bacteria mutate. Research from 2025 reveals that plastic is helping bacteria become resistant to antibiotics, fueling a crisis that modern medicine is struggling to contain. Why? Because plastic is an ideal platform for bacteria. Until recently, scientists already knew that microplastic serves as a convenient platform for bacterial colonization. On its surface, bacteria easily form biofilms. A biofilm is a dense, protective layer that shields bacteria from drying out, sunlight, immune system attacks, and most critically, the effects of antibiotics. It was also known that bacteria can survive on plastic longer than on other materials, sometimes for 3 days or more. All of this makes microplastic a key factor in the spread of dangerous microbes throughout the environment, in water, in soil, and at times even in food products. However, a recent study has led scientists to a critical discovery. Plastic aids bacteria not only physically as a kind of shelter, but also biochemically, functioning as a sort of power bank. Research has demonstrated in laboratory conditions that when bacteria come into contact with microplastic, they activate a special type of metabolism associated with electron transfer. Simply put, plastic particles can either donate electrons to bacteria or facilitate their transfer. This enhances the microbe's ability to survive under stress and accelerates their adaptation to antibiotics. This process is known as extracellular electron transfer, EET. It is significant because it provides bacteria with an auxiliary energy source that first enhances bacterial resilience, enabling more rapid replication, accelerated mutation, and the construction of highly durable, multi-layered biofilms. These biofilms function as fortresses, effectively blocking antibiotic agents from penetrating and reaching microbial targets. Second, this energetic reinforcement directly facilitates the development of antibiotic resistance. The bacteria not only endure, they begin actively synthesizing defensive mechanisms, enabling them to survive even the most potent pharmaceutical interventions. Moreover, even after the plastic is removed, the bacteria retain this enhanced capability. They have already mutated, adopted, and become stronger. They continue to construct resilient biofilms on other surfaces, even without the energy input once provided by plastic. For the first time, it has been demonstrated that microplastic is not merely an inert surface. It is an active participant in the development of antibiotic resistance. It alters bacterial metabolism and facilitates the selection of the most resilient and resistant strains. This means that plastic waste may be accelerating the emergence and spread of so-called superbugs, bacteria resistance to treatment. Let that sink in. Microplastic doesn't just help bacteria survive. It fuels them with energy, makes them stronger and more resilient, and thus plays an active role in the development of antibiotic resistance. This discovery fundamentally shifts our understanding of plastic pollution and makes it even more alarming. With each passing year, the problem of antibiotic resistance grows more acute. In many countries, cases are already being reported in which standard medications fail and even minor infections become difficult to treat. If we do not find a solution, antibiotics may eventually become useless. And this extends far beyond antibiotics. We are already witnessing how plastic affects the effectiveness of a wide range of medical interventions, from tissue regeneration to life extension therapies. Treatments that delivered consistent results just yesterday are now becoming unreliable. The same medications are beginning to behave unpredictably, and the underlying reason is microplastic, and more precisely, its electrical charge. It interferes with biological processes, alters cellular behavior, and disrupts signaling pathways. We can no longer rely on predictability in medicine unless we account for the fact that the body now contains a factor capable of distorting everything, from immune response to cellular memory. Today, the market, the medical field, and even some scientific circles are actively discussing supposed methods of cleansing the body of microplastic. These include techniques that allegedly remove plastic from the blood and tissues, such as plasmapheresis, hemoperfusion, mechanical filtration systems, dietary absorbents, and natural supplements claiming to detoxify the body. At first glance, the logic seems sound. If there's a toxic substance in the body, it must be removed. But the truth is, these methods do not solve the problem, neither technically nor fundamentally. Microplastic, especially in its nanoform, has already penetrated your cells, your tissues, and your neurons. It's not simply floating in your bloodstream like a guest you can politely ask to leave. It has integrated into your body. Yes, you can filter the blood, separate the plasma, and add a solution. But that solution likely contains plastic too. It leaches from the plastic IV bag, travels through the plastic tubing, and re-enters the body. We are using plastic in our very attempts to eliminate its consequences. Yes, such procedures may reduce the toxic burden, but they do not accomplish the most critical task. They do not extract plastic from your cells. They do not neutralize its electrical charge. They do not restore disrupted signaling pathways. They do not protect the brain, the immune system, or the mitochondria.
The rise in cancer rates worldwide is absolutely frightening. I think it's very legitimate to call it an epidemic. The statistics are sobering. The World Health Organization estimated that in 2020, worldwide there was about 18.1 million new cases of cancer, whereas in 2022, just 2 years later, it's gone from 18.1 million up to nearly 20 million. And in fact, according to the World Health Organization, if this trend continues, by 2050, worldwide there's going to be 33 to 35 million new cases of cancer, truly an epidemic and truly a real major health issue affecting every single person everywhere in the world. So yes, that's a huge problem.
For a long time, cancer was considered a disease of old age, the result of accumulated DNA mutations, weakened immunity, and years of exposure to carcinogens. But today, because of nanoplastic exposure, mutations can begin to build up in the body at much earlier stages of life.
There's an increased rate of cancer worldwide in children and also in people much younger than I used to see. So what's going on now is that we're having a rise in people getting cancer, children, young adults, and it's probably not due to smoking or alcohol or anything. There seems to be something else, something in the environment that is causing this cancer at an alarming rate, and it's getting worse. So a very serious problem, yes. And again, one of the possibilities that could be accounting for this, we'll be talking more about it, is indeed nanoplastics.
We observe in the last 30 years that in some countries we observe early onset cancerogenesis, so that tumors are diagnosed more early than previously. So that things like colorectal cancer are observed earlier and diagnosed earlier than 30 years ago in average.
A key role in tumor development may be played by mitochondrial dysfunction, caused by exposure to nanoplastics. This happens through the accumulation of mutations in mitochondrial DNA and the disruption of normal cell death mechanisms, which together reduce the body's ability to eliminate damaged cells and increase the likelihood of these cells transforming into tumor cells.
So these tumor cells are very aggressive, and normally they don't take anything up which they cannot use. So, I mean, what could happen, I mean, this is hypothetically that they can produce some energy out of these plastics, or somehow some pathways are activated which are helping, the cells to move faster. That could be. So we need to investigate that. So it's a very important question, and we are basically on that to find out what happens mechanistically in those cells, that they can use plastics to facilitate their microbial potential.
Nanoplastics increase levels of reactive oxygen species in organ cells and tissues, causing oxidative stress that accelerates the growth of cancer cells, helps them spread to other tissues, stimulates formation of new blood vessels, enhances inflammation, and weakens the immune system. Moreover, the high level of oxidative stress caused by electrostatically charged nanoplastics promotes the survival of tumor cells and reduces their sensitivity to therapy, making malignant cells more aggressive.
Anything that damages the normal cell DNA that is responsible for the growth and division of cells, that damage can contribute to that cell becoming malignant, growing and dividing and spreading uncontrollably. That's what cancer is. And that is certainly a concern about the effect of nanoplastics. And then above and beyond that, because nanoplastics affect so much of the cell's function, the oxygenation, the ability of a cell to function, above and beyond that, I'm concerned as a doctor that treats cancer that nanoplastics may be reducing the effectiveness of our cancer treatments. I'm a physician that treats cancer with radiation therapy, so I am concerned about nanoparticles adversely affecting the use of radiation therapy to control cancer. And there's actually been some preclinical research on this that does suggest that the nanoparticles, and certainly contributed to by the typical negative charge that they have, in addition to adversely affecting cells, can actually reduce the effectiveness of radiation therapy. There's certainly a significant theoretical reason to believe that the nanoparticles may reduce the effectiveness of cancer treatments, not only my modality of radiation therapy, but certainly I have the same concern about it reducing the effectiveness of chemotherapy or other systemic treatments or immunotherapy.
Research by the Medical University of Vienna has shown that micro and nanoplastic particles remain inside cells far longer than previously believed, as they are passed on to newly formed cells during division. In addition, there are also early indications that these plastic particles may play a role in tumor metastasis.
So that's one of the problems, that the tumor grows very quickly and then also disseminates. And what we observed is that these particles are kept by the cells even after cell division, and then they are helping the cells to migrate quicker, so they can move quicker. And that's a property which we also observe in tumor cells when they are in the body, so that they can move to other places and even metastasize. And so we have to assume that also in the body, that these tumor cells can basically use those plastics to proliferate and move around in the body. When I came to this plastic topic, I thought myself, that this is, we introduce here material which is potentially toxic, potentially accumulating over the years, over the decades of the centuries, so maybe for a very long time, affecting our health, but also the evolution. I not only mean the cancer evolution of how cancers originate, but even the evolution of new species and the evolution of the whole ecosystems.
Nanoplastics affect every system in the human body. They act as a trigger, setting off a cascade of processes that lead to serious illnesses, all because of their electrical charge. Today, we know that nanoplastics play a significant role in the development of conditions that have become the leading causes of death worldwide.
During pregnancy, a woman's body creates ideal conditions for the growth and protection of the fetus. However, even the placenta, the body's primary barrier between mother and child, cannot stop plastic nanoparticles from crossing through. A research team led by Antonio Ragusa made a landmark discovery when they detected microplastic particles in the human placenta for the first time. Their findings showed that plastic can penetrate a place where no artificial material had ever been found before, the very environment where new life begins.
I was in a wonderful place in Italy, in Sardinia, a place called Piscinas, in Sulcis, in the southwest of Sardinia, where the old mining areas are. It's a very remote, beautiful spot where there's nothing around for 6 or 7 kilometers. While I was walking, I suddenly saw these bright, colorful, sparkling things on the beach. I asked my wife, "What is this?" She looked at me a little puzzled and said, "Well, it's plastic." I said, "Plastic? How could plastic get here when there's nothing for 7 or 8 kilometers in any direction?" She looked at me again, with an expression that made it clear how little I understood, and said, "It comes from the sea, of course." And that's when something clicked in my mind. If plastic can spread through the ocean and end up in such untouched places, then it could also reach the inside of the womb, and so inside the bodies of babies. Naturally, from that intuition, I started pursuing this line of research. I'm a gynecologist. I help deliver babies. So I knew about plastics as much as everyone else, until a certain point. But I began reading and studying, and I reached out to some scientists who worked with microscopes. One of them was a brilliant professor working on the opposite side of Italy, in the Marsh region. She used a Raman microscope. A Raman microscope allows you to examine tissues and determine whether they have plastics inside them. Now we call it plastics, for simplicity. But of course, the term plastics covers a wide range of materials. There are dozens and dozens of different plastics. Let's say they are tiny pieces, polymers, that is, infinitely repeated tiny pieces of certain materials that we use every day, throughout the day. So we sent placentas to this professor, and she did an excellent job. She was able to locate and identify plastics inside placentas for the first time. The article we published in 2021 caused a bit of a scandal because the idea of plastics inside the placenta, inside our babies, was shocking to people. Because the plastic we find in the oceans is the same plastic we ultimately find in children.
Plastic triggers inflammation and disrupts blood flow in the placenta. This means the fetus receives less oxygen and fewer nutrients, increasing the risk of intrauterine growth restriction, hypoxia, and preterm birth.
The more plastic there is in the placenta, the more likely it is that babies, unfortunately, are born prematurely. And these babies also tend to be smaller compared to those with lower levels of plastic exposure. We have to recognize that premature birth is the main problem facing humans today. In Italy, it's about 7%. In the United States, where the healthcare system is clearly less effective than Italy's, 12% of babies are born prematurely. So, in this sense, an increase in this number would mean an even greater burden for humanity, biologically, for families, and for everyone involved, and of course, economically, for those who care about costs.
We know that these particles can be taken up by these particles going through the placenta and then being found in the embryo, and therefore indicating that already in very early life we have an exposure also to the embryo.
The electrostatic charge carried by nanoplastics is especially dangerous in embryonic tissues, where even minor disruptions can lead to developmental abnormalities. In other words, nanoplastics begin harming the child's body even at the very earliest stages of its formation. Over the past 2 decades, physicians have documented an alarming increase in congenital birth defects. For instance, Chinese researchers have found that in China, the rate of such defects has nearly tripled. Similar trends have been observed in other countries. One of the fastest-growing congenital abnormalities in newborns is gastroschisis, a defect of the anterior abdominal wall in which loops of the intestine and sometimes other organs protrude through an opening in the abdominal cavity. The prevalence of this defect has increased over the past 3 decades. For instance, in the United States between 1995 and 2012, the percentage increase in gastroschisis ranged from 68% to 263%. An increasing number of children are also being born with hypospadias, a condition in which the urethral opening in boys is located in an abnormal position. In the United States, the incidence of hypospadias has risen by approximately 17% over the past 20 years. A recent growing number of cases involving congenital heart defects, Down syndrome, and other developmental anomalies have also been reported. After birth, children continue to be exposed to micro and nanoplastic particles. Plastic baby bottles, food packaging, and toys are all sources of contamination. When a baby bottle containing warm water is shaken, up to 16 million microplastic particles per liter can be released. Hot water and sterilization further accelerate this process. As a result, infants are exposed daily to millions of microplastic particles and trillions of nanoplastics. Scientists have even detected microplastic in human breast milk. Research has shown that nearly 40% of breast milk samples, one of the most essential sources of infant nutrition, already contain hazardous plastic microparticles. Due to their higher metabolic rate and breathing frequency, children take in more air, water, and food per unit of body weight than adults. Consequently, at the same level of environmental contamination, their bodies absorb higher doses of microplastic. Moreover, the protective barriers in a child's body are not yet fully developed. This means plastic particles can penetrate tissues more easily and accumulate at higher concentrations. For example, in children under 2 years of age, the ethmoid bone is not yet fully formed, and its openings are wider, allowing plastic particles to pass more easily through the olfactory nerves directly into the brain.
Plastic is an infiltrator, and it's mainly children who are affected by it. In our scientific article that drew a lot of attention and was widely cited, we called them cyborg babies, meaning babies who are made of organic material, but also inorganic material like plastic. These babies are smaller. They generally have smaller brains, and very few end up with lower levels of plastic in their bodies. They're not completely free of it, since plastic is everywhere, but with lower levels of plastic.
Because of the electrostatic charge of micro and nanoplastic particles, as well as the presence of bisphenols and phthalates, the endocrine and reproductive systems of children are particularly vulnerable. These substances interfere with the formation and development of the reproductive organs, potentially leading to infertility later in life. Given scientific projections that by 2045 humanity could face widespread infertility, children born after 2020 may have a high likelihood of being unable to conceive their own offspring.
I have 2 little daughters, and for me personally, everything we have just heard is terrifying. The truth is that we still don't fully understand the catastrophic consequences of our children being exposed to micro nanoplastics. Or, as Dr. Ragusa put it, they have become cyborg children. We're only beginning to grasp the full scale of this reality. And it is truly heartbreaking to look at small children and realize that they may never be able to have children of their own. Not to mention that their lives are already at risk today.
The immune system is also at risk. In early childhood, it is still learning to distinguish between friends and foes. Exposure to microplastics can disrupt this process, increasing the risk of allergies, eczema, food intolerances, and even autoimmune diseases.
But it also has long-term consequences by which cell programming determines diseases that will then manifest themselves when a person reaches adulthood. That is, at 40 or 50 years of age. And these are diseases that are currently overwhelming, if not outright damaging, our world. They're the so-called non-communicable diseases: obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome.
A child's brain is especially vulnerable in the first years of life, a critical period of rapid nervous system development when neurons are formed and complex neural connections are established. However, electrostatically charged nanoplastic can interfere with these delicate processes by inducing inflammation, damaging immature nerve cells, and impeding their development. As a result, memory, attention, and learning abilities may be impaired, and emotional instability can arise. Over time, this may manifest as anxiety, learning difficulties, and episodes of aggression. In addition, studies indicate a potential link between exposure to micro and nanoplastic and the development of autism spectrum disorders. Given the breadth of damage that electrostatically charged micro and nanoplastics can inflict on the human body, the scientific community may need to examine their possible role in the rapid rise of autism more closely.
For me as a father, it is heartbreaking to realize how truly defenseless our children are. Micro and nanoplastics start affecting them from the very moment of conception, persist throughout fetal development, and continue their impact after birth. Unfortunately, the illnesses that we have already discussed are not the only conditions that micro and nanoplastics can trigger in children. According to statistics, sudden infant death syndrome is among the leading causes of mortality in infants under 1 year old. This is when a seemingly healthy baby dies unexpectedly, and the cause remains unknown even after all examinations. The number of such tragedies is rising rapidly. In the United States, for example, the number of sudden infant deaths has increased by 12% between 2020 and 2022. It is unbearably tragic when there's no way to protect a child.
Since nanoplastics can cause chronic inflammation in any tissue they penetrate, they can disrupt the formation of neural connections even before birth, including in the regions of the fetal brain that control breathing and heart function. After birth, the damaging influence of electrostatically charged nanoplastics continues. An infant's nervous system is still developing and remains highly unstable. Therefore, even minor disturbances in signal transmission can lead to respiratory or cardiac arrest. These very functions are often impaired in infants who die from sudden infant death syndrome. Moreover, when micro and nanoplastics damage mitochondria, the affected cells begin producing less energy. To compensate for this deficit, they increase the number of copies of mitochondrial DNA and expand their population of mitochondria. Studies have shown that children who died from sudden infant death syndrome had a significantly higher number of mitochondrial DNA copies in their cerebral cortex compared with control groups, suggesting that this number may serve as a biomarker in cases of sudden infant death syndrome. Thus, exposure to micro and nanoplastics may be a key factor in the development of sudden infant death syndrome, as well as in a range of pathologies that contribute to premature infant mortality.
We're unable to protect ourselves, and worst of all, our children from the effects of micro and nanoplastics. While modern diagnostic equipment capable of accurately identifying the true causes of disease and death is still not available everywhere, we can say with high degree of confidence that nanoplastics contribute to the development of many illnesses and may accelerate their progression. In those rare cases where detailed postmortem examinations were conducted, researchers have found significant amounts of micro-nanoplastic particles precisely in the affected organs and tissues. For example, in brain tissues, atherosclerotic plaques, malignant tumors, and other pathological formations. But despite millions of deaths every year, such investigations into the presence of these plastic particles are carried out only in isolated cases. There are two main reasons for this. First, many laboratories simply lack the equipment required to reliably detect micro and nanoplastics. Second, doctors and researchers, they rarely consider the possibility that these particles could potentially influence the development or outcome of the disease. Consequently, medical reports continue to list familiar diagnoses, although behind them may lie an overlooked factor: the impact of micro and nanoplastics on the human body. I understand that hearing this part of our investigation may have been very difficult. It was for me as well, believe me. But the impact of micro nanoplastics on all of us is not something we can continue to ignore. This is a crisis already underway, one that remained unnoticed for so long because the threat has been working silently within. Every day, and I'm not talking about every year or every month, but every single day, the amount of micro and nanoplastics around us continues to increase. Large plastic waste constantly breaks down into smaller particles, and these particles eventually enter our bodies through the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe. This means that with every meal, every sip of water, and every breath, huge quantities of nanoplastics enter our bodies and begin their destructive work. Their harmful effects on our cells grow in direct proportion to their concentration. And this is a scientific fact. What's even more alarming is that today, there is already so much micro nanoplastics accumulated in the ocean that it will be enough to destroy the entire biosphere, including humans, at least 3 times over. When we hear about threats of such magnitude, our instinct is to run away from them. And I understand that. It may feel like the only logical response is to eliminate plastic from our lives completely, or better yet, to take our family and move to some pristine corner of our planet. But would that really solve the problem? In fact, where could we possibly go to escape micro and nanoplastics?
It's like your brain overloads and you just can't think anymore. Like your head is about to explode. The lights, the sounds, everything. It's just too much.
I will say that 1 in 36, if that's not a pandemic, then what is?
It is too small for us to see. Yet it is dangerous enough to change our future. Particles are so small that they can penetrate cells. And even the brain. Is this already the end? Or is there still a chance? It's time to uncover the truth before it's too late.